Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Debatable with your host, Nina. There is no Kyle today, but that's okay. Today, we're going to talk to one of our motion contributors for Debatable Open 2024. With us, we have Akeem. Akeem has been in the circuit just as long as I have, right? We met each other. We met each other judging. Yeah, I think I met you in a judge capacity, or were you coaching
Yes.
already back then?
Yes, I was coaching Adu already back then.
Yeah, so I met Akeem a while back, and now we are together in the coaching realm in the Philippine circuit. So, hello, Akeem, how are you?
It yeah, it's been great. Been lie low a bit in debating, but hope to be back active in the next tournaments in the next few months. So I'm so happy to be back here at Debatable.
Yes, I hope we get to see you also compete and judge a bit more. For today, we're going to talk about our motion set on education. So we have a wonderful set over here, a lot of really diverse motions. So before we begin, Akeem, I do want to ask you what inspired this set? Like, is there a general theme, or was there something you were going for when you were thinking of motions for this tournament?
Yeah, that's a good question. Personally, I think the inspiration behind the set is really from my background today. For those who know me, I've been teaching in a university here in Davao in ADU for a while, and my personal experiences have also led me to explore the different issues about the education sector in the Philippines. But also, second, my love for international relations. It has always been one of my favorite topics in debate. And that's why one of my emotions is not based in the Philippines, but is based on another country. So, but overall, that's basically the inspiration behind the motions.
All right, I'm really excited to talk about the motions. They seem like all very different, and like some of these motions are classics, I would say, but a lot of them have their own little twist to it. So our
Yes.
first motion is this house as the Philippines would aggressively integrate space education in its basic education curriculum. So there's an info slide here. So it says space education, also known as space science education, encompasses the teaching and learning of concepts related to space exploration, astronomy, astrophysics, astronautics, and related fields. So I do want to ask a little bit of do we already have something similar here? Because the word is like aggressively integrate. And some of these things, personally, I've encountered them in school, right? We talked a little bit about astrophysics, astronomy, but not in so much detail. So I do want to ask, like, what do you think an aggressive integration would look like, or how is this very different from what we do already?
Yeah. Just to give you a background, our space program in the Philippines started in 2014. We already have the Philippine Space Agency, and if I'm not mistaken, it's based in Manila. And with that, we all part of the program was to introduce courses in the higher education. So one of the inspiration behind the motion is our new course in ADU, Aerospace Engineering. And I think there's also a counterpart of it in UP Diliman and so on and so forth. But back in 2016, during a DOST forum about space education, there was a suggestion by a Filipino scientist that space education should start in the basic ed. And yes, you're right. There have been courses about science and math, but how the motion is worded, it specifically states that aggressively integration. So, how does it look like? First, there really has to be a specific subject that is really focused on space education. So, it's not just general science, but really a space science education. Second, when they talk about aggressive integration, you'll really have to build laboratories, space facilities in public schools, in state universities, which will really be different from the education landscape what we have right now, because we don't have those facilities. Probably some schools have space lab, but that's it. But with how the motion is worded, it will really call for the Philippine government really integrate space education both in the curriculum and infrastructure wise, starting in the basic education. So that's the twist of the motion compared to other space education motions in the past.
All right. So I do notice there's like a lot of moving parts in this motion. Like you could talk about like the budget, you can talk about like
Yeah,
the priorities of the country. I am curious first for side proposition, right? How would you, because I know this is not one of those motions where you have to be super strict with the policy. Like
true.
proposition has a bit of fiat, right? But how would you set it up on Gov to kind of anticipate the arguments from op? Like they will obviously say we don't have the budget, we don't have the ability to do it. So how would you set it up?
I think first you have to recognize what are the problems of the Philippines in terms of education right now. And one of that is the Philippines has been performing miserably in math and science. Second, we have been lagging behind in terms of technological advancement, and we have an over reliance to Western technology and so on and so forth. So given that, I think first one of the interests of the Philippine government, because I think this is an actor motion. It talks about from the perspective of the Philippine government and the Philippines as a whole. One of the interests really is to forward technological advancement in the country and develop local science tech and not rely and you can do that with introducing space science at an early age in basic curriculum, because with that you can inspire students at an early age to pursue STEM fields, which right now might not necessarily be the case, and might not necessarily be the same case with other traditional subjects that they might not be able to inspire. And second, if you teach space science subjects, you will be able to create and develop a pool of experts in the country. No? Experts specifically in subjects like satellite technology and so on and so forth. And I think one of the most important things that the Philippines also has interest is it can make the country competitive in important sectors like telecommunication, weather forecasting, and national security. Though some might argue that you can also do this with other courses, but I think with space science, you're able to really have a focus. The government can really have a focus in developing their own experts here in the country. And I think these fields that I mentioned are very, very crucial, especially since the country is disaster prone. So there are a lot of benefits that we can get by developing our own technology here in the country and of course developing our pool of experts. So yeah.
I'm curious though because I know that a lot of students or younger people might not be aware, right? Like space education like includes, like you mentioned, like satellite placement, like
Mm.
disaster risk and all of that. Why is it not possible or hard to integrate that currently in our math and science fields? Like you mentioned, a big thing for prop is to separate it. So what happens when you separate it that gives it like more of an advantage compared to, let's have a semester or maybe like a separate course when you're older. Like what's the benefit of separating it as early as basic education?
Yeah, because right now the problem with the math and science field is science in itself is a very big field. Okay, there are a lot of topics are integrated in the science in itself. You have biology, you have math, you have physics, and space as a topic there is not really a focus. Probably it's just an example, a case, and so on and so forth. So if the pursuit of the government is to really develop space education, you can't do that with the current curriculum. But with the creation now of a space subject and with the goal of in the mind of the government to really have a clear space development program starting in the basic ed, you can only achieve that if you have a subject that can really focus on space education. Right now, what's happening is a lot of students develop space education probably randomly through YouTube and so on and so forth. So, and you can really see that in terms of how many students take the different tracks in senior high, STEM, and so on and so forth. There are more students taking the other tracks. So, I think that's the direct benefit of having really a separate subject rather than just you integrating it in other subjects, in general science subjects.
All right. I think there's a lot more we can talk about for proposition, right? So
Yeah.
like talking about the job market, the economy. But let's leave that for a while. I think a lot of those arguments we've already kind of talked about. I do want to ask now for opposition, right? Like, what do you think is the strongest strategy? Because one angle you can have is like, oh, we can't do it. Another angle is, oh, it's a waste. You could also
Yeah.
talk about why it might not be the most beneficial. I think a lot of our debaters or a lot of the students I coach, they know how to make arguments. It's a
Yep.
question of what do you prioritize? So, what do you think is the strongest angle or case here for opposition to focus on?
I think the easiest is one first is there if you look at the needs of the educational sector, the most pressing need in line with the interest of the Philippine government is not really space education, but really first improve building more classrooms because there are many cases where students are studying under the coconut tree or so on and so forth. Improving the student to teacher ratio because time and time again it has been proven that that ratio has a big effect on the academic performance of students. And of course, thirdly, probably increasing the wages of teachers, especially those teachers teaching in various subjects. So, if you really want to improve math and science, as the problem pointed out by government side, space education is not the only option. And in fact, probably the best option is to really go back to the roots of the problem of the education sector. And second, I think the biggest issue in relation to budget is not just short term, but really long term, the sustainability. Because when you talk about space education, it cannot be just be the curriculum. You need to build facility. If you look at how US did it, they really had microscopic NASA prototypes in some schools, or how Japan did it, because those are the leading countries in terms of space education. You really have to build facilities. So the second question really there is the sustainability of the program. You might have a budget for the first few years, but how about the next few years, especially if more pressing problems with regards to education will pop up in the future? And I think those will be the strongest arguments that opposition will be throwing at. So hopefully government will be able to prepare for those.
Yeah, I was thinking as government, right? I think, or one angle I could run is obviously that I think science and space explorations, particularly, or space education in general, they have a lot of returns, right?
Yeah.
I think I would say against that even if we fix schools, even if we increase wages, we're not really moving education forward, right? In the
Yeah.
Philippines. Like we're just kind of fixing the problems. And if I were Gov, I would say, we need to make some risks. We need to take some
Yeah.
steps, or else we're never gonna specialize in anything. So how do
Yeah.
you think op can respond to that, right? Like you mentioned there might be better alternatives. How would you prove that by fixing what we have now, increasing the wages of teachers, we're actually going to move Philippine education forward? Because I think prop has it a bit easier by showing, well, space brings us this, right? We have a
Yeah.
specialization now. Op has to defend, like, basically we're gonna fix status quo, but we just still have status quo. So how would you link that to an improvement on side op?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But at least you make gradual improvements. I think the main response to that is there might not be a dramatic improvement in terms of science and math. But at least if you can build more classrooms, because one space facility could be an equivalent to 10 classrooms. At least if you can just ease the congestion in the classrooms, allow the students to be more inspired and to have a more motivated ambience and so on and so forth. So hopefully gradually there will be an improvement in terms of the academic performance of the students in terms of math and science. And hopefully there will be returns later on, especially when they become experts in their own fields, and hopefully they be able to contribute to the Philippine economy. So I think the improvement might not be as dramatic like in the space education, because it will be onion. There will be development of pool of experts. There will be clear improvement of space facilities. But at least for the opposition side, the improvement might be gradual, but at least the risks are lower compared to building very expensive facilities. So yeah.
All right, I think most of my questions were answered already, but I was just wondering if there are other angles to explore. So you did mention earlier, you have such a big interest in IR also. So I was thinking like space education. There's just got a lot of space race issues right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of satellite wars happening above us that we don't know about. Is there like a possible extension or different extensions that you feel both teams can explore more?
For government side, the biggest one is space collaboration, really. In status quo right now, kasi we don't have our own space facility. We don't have a NASA. So most of our graduates, both from UP and other schools, are sent off to Japan. So one of the intangible benefit of actually developing space education is you build stronger ties with other countries, which you might not get if you focus solely in building classrooms. So with building your own space agency, you're able to strengthen your ties with Japan. You're able to get knowledge from Japanese experts, bring that knowledge back to the Philippines, which will be very, very important, which you might not get for the opposition side. So I think that's one of the big IR arguments that government can run, which is the intangible benefit of the space education and space science.
For op, can I spin that? Because I was thinking, isn't that a risk also? Like right now, certain
Brain
countries,
drain?
yeah, brain drain.
Yeah.
Also, like, won't we be a threat? Like now that we're developing, we might be making friends, but do you think we will also make enemies? Like now that we, are making our own facilities, we have the capability to satellite track different, activities around our area. Like, do you think there's an angle there, or am I reaching too far already?
I think not yet right now. The technological gap is still too wide for other countries to feel insecure with the Philippines space race or space technology. But I think the biggest problem could be is that if we do develop graduates of space education, who will really benefit? Is it really the Philippines or other countries? Because right now what's
Oh.
happening is Japan is pirating a lot of our graduates. So even though there's a noble cause to develop our own space agency, but because we don't have the facilities, a lot of our experts are studying or working abroad in NASA, in Europe, in Japan. So that's also probably one of the downfall of the globalization of space education.
All right, thank you very much. I think there's so many more things
Yeah,
we
many
can
more
cover,
things
right?
for discussion.
But but for the sake of like everyone like hearing more about the different motions, we're gonna wrap that up and move on. So
Yeah,
I'm very excited about the second motion. I think there's a lot of like
yeah.
interesting like IR elements also here, a lot of minority elements like movement things that integrate itself with it. So I'm just gonna read the info slide first. It says you are an Afghan teacher in an underground girls' school in Afghanistan. You are also a staunch advocate of girls' education in the country. However, the Taliban has strictly imposed a ban on girls' education starting 12 years old and up. Recently, the government has undertaken major crackdowns on underground schools, putting you and your family at risk. This house, as an Afghan teacher, would continue to teach in the underground girls' school. I think this is like even if you're not in that situation, a lot of people can, in their own countries relate a little bit to the idea of, do we continue doing something that we
Yeah.
know is good? Right? I think we're very fortunate that debate is not something that is cracked down on, but I do imagine a lot of people, have this fear naturally. So I do want to ask, right, what particularly inspired this motion? I know it's a conversation, it happens a lot, but is there anything that sparked this motion and you wanting to run it here?
To be honest, I've been keeping this motion for a very long time. No? I'm pretty sure this motion will be run for the first time. Though there have been motions about Taliban banning educate, but there has not been a actor motion that I have seen in the many tournaments that I've joined. The first one is that I really had an interest about the war in Afghanistan for a long time because of my background in IR. And I read a lot about the articles about the possible effects of Afghan society if the Taliban takes over. And what really stood out to me in the many articles I read was really girls' education, because that used to be what was happening in Afghanistan before the global war on terror of George Bush back in after the 9/11. So the Taliban is back in power, and now they have imposed a ban on secondary education and up. And probably second is I read an article about underground girls' school in Taliban. So this is not something I just made up. There are really underground schools in Afghanistan where teachers really put their lives at stake, because the punishment could be from torture to death to teachers who are caught teaching girls in these underground schools. So basically, those were the interests, and I'm really happy to finally run this motion in this tournament.
Oh, we're very privileged that you ran it here. I think there's so many things to discuss, right? So I do wanna
Yes.
maybe separate this from, and it's an actor motion, maybe like the clash on like the individual, then maybe the
Yeah.
clash on like what happens to the students, the girls' school
Yes.
students. Because I know that's a big thing that if you're a teacher and you're very passionate, you basically love your students, you have to think about them also. And
Yeah.
then maybe the last is on like the bigger implication, like a societal effect.
Yeah.
So when it comes to like your own individual perspective, like assuming you're the actor devotion, right? Like you're the teacher in this situation, what's the strongest argument you think for both sides to run?
So from an individual perspective, because you're not only a teacher, according to the info slide, you're a staunch advocate of girls' education. So the best way and the best form of protest and defiance is to continue teaching. That's probably the easiest argument for from a personal level. It is in line both as your interest as a teacher and in line with your interest and your advocacy of girls' education. You're not silenced by the oppression. So by continue to teach, that's the best form of protest. That's the best form of continuing your mandate as a teacher. Probably for opposition side is the main the biggest response to that is that as a teacher, it's not only your priority to continue to teach, but also to think about the welfare of your students. Because once you continue to teach in the underground girls' school, you don't only put yourself at risk. All the girls will probably be arrested by the Taliban, who will be caught on the act of learning from you. So if that happens, then probably you fail as a teacher because you place your students at risk, despite your noble efforts to really bring forth education despite the the Taliban. So I think that's the first one in terms of the personal level. The second, I think the important discussion is in terms of the movement itself. I think one part of the info slide that is crucial is that you're not only a teacher, you're also part of this bigger group who advocates for girls' education. So first thing for government, by continuing to teach, it's not only the it's not only an act of empowerment to the students themselves because they can continue to learn, but by you defying the national ban of Taliban, you could probably inspire more teachers to join your cause because they see you acting bravely despite the national ban. Thirdly, it could also open the eyes of those probably who are not currently teaching but could change their mind because they could see you as a model or as an example. So in terms of the benefit of the movement, it could embrace more people to continue to protest Taliban by continue to teach in underground girls' school, despite the risk. But I think what opposition can argue here is that what happens if firstly you get arrested, di ba? Of course, not only as I mentioned, you put your students at risk, but you also put your advocacy at risk, given that probably you have a big role in the movement in Afghanistan. Or a worst case scenario, you get killed, di ba? So that's probably a big blow to the movement per se. So instead of probably pursuing, kasi I think there are other alternative options, no? I think one of the opposition can argue here is that if you just want to protest against Taliban, it's not just by teaching you can put out your advocacy against Taliban, but there are other alternative options in which you can still fight for girls' education. So probably through international media, probably online forums, probably creating other organizations. So by pursuing other alternatives, you don't risk yourself getting arrested on the spot because the ban right now is in terms of those teaching girls education. But of course, you continue you're able to continue to fight for your advocacy. And of course, probably the last angle of here and the last clash would be the welfare of the students themselves. Where are the students better off? Are the students better off being taught, being felt empowered despite the national ban? Or at the end of the day, the most important priority are the lives of the themselves? Because what if they get arrested? What if they get tortured and raped by the Taliban forces? So I think that would be a bigger blow to the already disempowered women in Afghanistan. So I think those are the various angles that both sides can
I am
argue.
curious though. I think another really interesting angle here is, you know, both sides will frame it that you're going to be in danger either way, right? It's just a matter
Yeah.
of how you affect the students. What if it's the students that want you to teach, right? I think what's the alternative of op? Like, is op supposed to be okay with these girls not having like their education anymore? Or is it more reasonable that okay, I'll stop, but someone is gonna do it also? Because I think op can be sneaky, or I've seen a lot
Yeah.
of op teams try to be sneaky about it. What do you think is the fairest angle? And for me personally, I think the fairest one is to accept like, okay, maybe there will be no more schools. How do you defend that at op, right? Like, yes, they're alive, but they're not learning. How is that a life worth living?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. If the frame up would really be extreme, what if there will be no schools? I think one of the best ways to argue that is that if we just talked about female empowerment, though education is one of the best ways of women empowerment, there are still other ways for women empowerment, and I think closing down the schools might be a big blow to the learning process of the women, but I think there are still existing alternatives where women can still play a big role in Afghan society. So I think it's not the end. It's not the end. And second, probably this could be by siguro if they close down all the schools, probably this could strengthen more the movement. This could uplift the fire of probably the moderates, or could really uplift the fire of those who have been apathetic with the issue of the national ban, and could really strengthen the movement more to pursue other ways of female empowerment, or really to pressure the Taliban to change the policy. So, I think naman, even if ganun yung frame up, I think it's not the end for opposition side.
Yeah, I think in this motion, right, it's all about how you frame it. I think any outcome can happen. It's a hypothetical situation.
Yeah.
Well, it's not hypothetical. I'm pretty sure someone is encountering this problem right now. But for the purposes of this debate, you are assuming that you are an Afghan teacher. So basically, you have to really frame it up. You and
Yeah.
I have judged a lot. We do know like a lot of novices kind of struggle with this, right? They just kind of jump to the conclusion like if we teach, they will die, or if we don't teach, they will suffer, right? What's your tip for in a motion like this where it's very personal? How do you ground it, or how do you make the outcomes more realistic? Like I guess you don't have to give a specific one, just a general tip, because after motions like this, even if it's fun to debate, a lot of novices and even older debaters like myself, we have a hard time, right? So what tip do you
Yeah.
have for that?
So I think first you really have to tell the story. You really have to build a narrative, a story of the Afghan teacher. I think lately the one of the meta in Philippine, though this is not the meta in world debates, that we really love actor motions lately. And what I've seen is that teams who are able to build narratives and stories of their actors have an advantage. So that's the first one. Second one is that don't go directly to the worst case scenario. So as we mentioned, sometimes arguing if they die, that could be a trap. So try to argue first what if they stay alive. Look at the different possible scenarios that could happen to the Afghan teacher. Whether she gets arrested, she continues teaching. So I think that's another tip that I suggest to all the debaters if they encounter this motion or they encounter similar motions to explore the different scenarios. And lastly, to really be comparative. I think that's the most important thing, to really be comparative. Because either way, like for example, either way, you can prove that women empowerment can happen. So it's a matter of telling the judge where women empowerment can be better off. Second, both teams can argue that the collective movement for girls' education can happen. So it's a matter of providing the clear walkthrough and mechanization in really telling the adjudicator where the movement is better off at the end of the day. So I think being comparative, especially not only in terms of outcomes, but in really discussing how the outcome will be reached is very, very important.
All right, let's move on to our last motion. This
Yes.
last motion, I think, became a little bit popular in social media, right? A lot of people were talking about it. This was because of the pandemic. It's also because
Yeah.
of the recent like law examinations. So it reads: This House believes that educational institutions should heavily de-emphasize the value of academic excellence, e.g., implementing a pass or fail system, abolishing all academic distinctions, etc. What's your personal experience with this though? So sir, like I know we have been in the education sector for quite a while in different capacities. I do want to ask first, like, what trends have you noticed? Why did we even start thinking about this? For a while we never questioned it. There was an honor section, there was a top 10 top schools, like it was so normal for us. What do you think caused the shift, at least from your point of view?
Yeah. Actually, you pointed out some of those things. First, let's face it, we have a culture in the Philippines where we over glorify academic achievements. I think we're one of the few countries that said, though there's nothing totally wrong about it, but we glorify top 10 in the bar, top 10 in the various exams, and so on and so forth. And I don't see that in other countries really, where they over glorify that. And second, I think one of the major factors why this motion got really popular and its various variations is really the pandemic. There was a concept of relaxed standards, relaxed requirements. That was the term that we used back in our university, relaxed standards. For the first time, we were giving out removal exams, multiple chances to students, where the university wanted to prioritize the mental health over academic achievements for the first time. And really, that was out of culture because for the longest of time, and I think you yourself can relate how the culture in UP has been ever since, that there has really been an preference and value in terms of the academic excellence. So I think those were my major inspiration. Probably siguro personally. As a teacher, as the time went by, siguro, compared to when I was a young teacher, I was very ideal. But with the issue of mental health, depression, and other things, I think I became more accommodating to students and not really just focusing on the numerical value in their test. So I think that's one of the inspirations probably also for the motion.
So I want to ask for proposition, right? I think one of the burdens for the teams here would be to show that academic excellence, or the emphasis on it, it might have been good before, but it's not
Yeah.
like useful anymore, right?
Yeah.
So do you personally think it was always bad, or did it just become bad recently? What's the frame here for proposition? How do you frame it fairly? Because I think it's also unfair to say like academic excellence as a standard was always horrible. We should like never have done it. I think there was a shift, right? So I'm kind of curious, what's the fairest way for prop to kind of set up a debate like this?
That's a good question because academic excellence in itself, as you said, is not really bad. But when schools just focused on it and invest a lot of their financial, their probably their resources to the pursuit of academic excellence. And that's where the problem comes in, because you don't recognize, especially during the pandemic, there was a digital divide. Not everyone had access to the internet. And second, there were a lot of issues of mental health and so on and so forth in the pursuit of academic excellence. So I think that's when the problem came in, when the culture became solely focused on academic excellence. And we started to disregard the mental health of students, the emotional health of students, and focused more on the top 10, the awards, the distinctions, the master's post number degrees. And I think this was also a factor of globalization, because in the past years, the rankings, international rankings, have been very, very popular. So with that, schools had to ramp up their academic requirements, academic standards, and so on and so forth. But at what cost? The costs were the mental health and the emotional health of their students in pursuit of rankings, both locally and internationally. I think that's where the problem came in.
And I'm curious for prop, how do you defend that shift, right? Like a lot of our standing as a country, our funding as schools, they do rely on academic excellence. Like if you rank high, you get more benefits, maybe from the government, maybe from international bodies. So why is it worth that risk? Or is there a way for me to say that we can still get all of these things even if we don't have like a objective metric? Like we can't claim anymore we're a top 10 school, we can't claim we have 100% passing rate or whatever, which a lot of schools like really hold on to, right? So
Yeah.
how do you kind of either preempt that at prop, or how do you respond that yeah, that's okay? Because I'm having a hard time personally. Like I don't like academic excellence as like a major focus, but part of
Mhm.
me like can see without it we kind of lose a lot, right?
Yeah. So I think first, both sides, there will really be costs. That's one thing that you have to preempt. In government side, if you de-emphasize value of academic, because there are examples here, you implement no more implementation or probably less implementation of a pass and fail system, probably abolishing academic distinctions. So I think how prop can say this is that even if you lower your standards, it does not automatically mean that you lose your budget, you lose your academic standing, because if you lower your standards, there will also be other fields that can be revived, because with lower standards you'll be able to recognize your students talents in other fields, probably in sports. So if your students excel in sports, that can also entice corporate sponsors and so on and so forth. So budget and money is not really mutually exclusive to academic excellence. And second, I think at schools and universities, though your goal is learning, but learning should not be at the cost of the well-being of your students. I think that's one of the most important things. And with the rise of cases in the Philippines of mental health problems, depression, and so on and so forth, schools must be able to balance academic excellence at the same time under taking care of the holistic development of their students. So I think those are the things that the side can still argue if they de-emphasize academic excellence.
So my question now is, you know, prop I feel like has such a strong emotional pull, right? Like of course we want to focus on mental health. Of course it's very pressuring. So if you were up, how do you like enter a debate and reframe or set up to kind of remove the the edge that proposition might have right now?
Of course, one of the easiest ways, first, there will be an overall decline, really, of educational quality, because one, you remove one of the ways for teachers to evaluate your students. Though there is really a benefit, though you have to recognize that there might be a benefit that the other talents and fields that students can excel might be recognized, but the academic standards of the school will really suffer. because now you remove probably the safety net of teachers. Second, one of the arguments also for opposition side here is that, especially in a labor-driven market like the Philippines or other countries, is what will happen to the future opportunities of students. No? So probably, especially in terms of in specific industries that really require academic excellence, no? Kasi a lot of the industries right now will require academic performance in your college. You cannot apply for a work in a accountancy firm and say you're good in basketball and so on and so forth. So that's one of the problems in a long-term perspective, especially the kind of job opportunities and markets that the students will be entering. And probably one of the most problematic things that will happen in university setup in an education institution is really the lack of accountability for the students. So now, if you de-emphasize the value of academic excellence, how will you measure? How will you assess? How will you evaluate? Though Gov can argue that there are many ways to measure students' capabilities, students' talents. You can use psychological metrics and so on and so forth. But what we're talking about here is at the end of the day, you're still an academic institution. And one of the things that you have to do is to measure them academically. So if you don't have those measurements, you'll probably create a culture where there's no, people will be nonchalant, relaxed, no, not taking a good concern about their education and so on and so forth. So those will be probably the negative effects both to the students and of course to the institution themselves. So at the end of the day, I think one thing is important for the teams. The most important thing here is to really highlight how the de-emphasis on academic excellence could have positive or negative effects to the educational institution themselves, to the quality of education, and of course, to the students themselves. And whoever team does that will have a probably bigger chance to win in the round.
All right, thank you very much. I think once again, so many things you can explore here. I
Yeah.
think how I want to end this entire interview is, I think a common theme in this is that it's all about framing. So many things you can say. Education is super diverse. We never know what the outcome will be, right? I
Yeah.
think you give the students the same kind of instructions and then they can do very different things with it. What advice do you have for our novices that are, might be having struggles with education motions or have a hard time kind of building, even if it's their own experience, right? I think I have some students where they actually have a harder time when it's something related to them because they don't know how to, like I have a different experience, you have a
Yeah.
different experience. Like they just end up using examples like that's not true, that doesn't happen to me, etc. What advice do you have for people, especially people who are starting out in debate when it comes to education motions?
So first one is of course you really have to read. You really have to read a lot. There's no secret and there's no overnight option for you to be a good debater about education. It's really first you really have to matter load, read about the various issues about education from the primary, secondary. So learn also about the basic terminologies in education. So I think that's the first one. You really have to matter load about education, both from the Philippine setup and look at the various trends internationally. Second, you really have to go back. What are the basic principles in education? So, what are the roles of the state in education? So, you have to look at that. What are the important rights of students? What are the important aspects of education that you really have to discuss? So, I think that's the second one. You have to familiarize yourselves with the different principles with regards to education discussions. And lastly, I think one of the most important thing if you discuss about education motion is that again, don't be tempted to argue by example, no? Kasi I think especially for novices, most of them are students, so they might be using their own personal stories, but of course, if you're a judge, personal story will not have a big merit. So you really have to go back to a very general example that is applicable given the motion. And lastly, I think the most important thing is to really understand what the motion calls for. I think every motion calls for a different thing. Like for the first motion, it does not talk about space education as a whole. It talks about space education in the basic education. So I think one of the most important questions here is that why start at an early age and not just rely later on in the tertiary education. And second, you're not just a teacher, but you're an Afghan teacher, and also you're an advocate of girls' education. So those are the things that you really have to understand when you're trying to build your arguments later. And lastly, of course, how do de-emphasis really looks like? How does it affect the various stakeholders in education, from the universities and schools to the students and so on and so forth? So for the last tip, we really have to understand the wording of the motion, because all of the things that I said beforehand will be useless if you'll not be really able to understand what the spirit of the motion calls for at the end. So hopefully the debaters will enjoy the motion. I'm not sure what they will choose. Probably a lot of the teams will veto motion two, but I hope at least one room will vote for motion two.
I'll let you know. I'll let you know what the veto like, because I know Tabby Cat has a like a percentages thing. I'm
Yeah.
gonna send it to you so you know. All right, thank you very much, Akeem, for making the time to do this interview and for making the motions for us. I'm really excited to see how people debate this. You've also been such a great help to Debatable as an initiative overall. And all the Philippine debaters, I'm sure, like you have your own little army of past students already, the same as I. And
Yeah.
we really, really appreciate everything you've been doing for us. Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you very much.